Hello and welcome to the Hare in the Hawthorn. I'm hoping you're all having a good evening and I'm super excited. I really am. This is probably number 5 in the mini-series that I've been doing, where I've been talking to all kinds of different people about experiences that they've had within a broad paranormal spectrum, really. So far we've had skyfish, we've had, the last one was a witch who was a shapeshifter. So that was an awesome one. I am waiting for somebody to come on board with a Yeti encounter, or somebody who's been taken on board of a mothership or something like that. As always with my guest right now, I know very little about what this story is, where it's going. I know a small amount about, excuse me, where the origins of this story are. And for that, I have been like, I am super curious about this one. I am so excited about where this is going to go, because it's something I think that's going to kind of brush on to aspects that I've spoken about with Neil Rushton in a previous interview that I did, and also things that have happened to me as well. So I want to welcome Christian to Hare in the Hawthorn. I'm not going to say too much about him because I'm going to let him introduce himself. And yeah, I'm super excited for this. Hello, Christian. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. It's nice talking to you, Kate.
You too, you too. So we have been talking a little bit, and you've really kind of got my cogs going about where I have no idea where this is going to go. We talked about liminal landscaping and sort of peripheries of realms and stuff like that, but nothing very solid. So do you want to say a little bit about yourself, a little bit of background? Is that something that's going to be relevant, or do you want to just dive in straight into the story?
I can give a little bit of background. Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a newbie to this kind of material,
Mhm.
and so I'm not super knowledgeable, and I've got a handful of experiences, a small handful of experiences that have always kept me curious and have
Mhm.
also opened me up, and in a way, in one way, to reach out to somebody like Kate here.
Mhm.
Um, Hopefully, I can get some insight, and hopefully, other folks will find it interesting.
I'm sure they will. I am so excited. My spidey senses are telling me this is going to be a goodie.
Okay, I guess I'll get right into it. I'll frame it around this. I've got this condition that's called narcolepsy. Some people know about it. It's maybe new to some other folks, but this, I think, is, in a way, it kind of makes me in tune to some extra experience
Mhm.
in the realm of paranormal, because my waking life and my dreaming life, in a significant percentage of my life experience, overlaps, and so there's this strange, like, gray zone
Mhm.
where some things happen, and I don't really know where it's happening. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's what we really happening, or if it's something that is just in a dream. Um, and so
Can I just
now
can I just can I just ask, because I know there'll be a lot of people out there that probably don't know what narcolepsy is. Can you just
okay,
very briefly explain what it is and how it affects how that affects you?
sure. It's a neurological condition, and I've been formally diagnosed 3 times in my life.
Mhm.
It's a really long and elaborate testing procedure. I've gone through it, and I've nailed every um, uh, every every check mark in the book every
Mhm.
time. And basically, it has to do with the patterns of sleep and your brain activity. And normally, people go through about 5 or 6 stages of sleep.
Mhm.
In a very normal sense, it's from a lighter stage into more deeper stages, into the deepest stage, and then you wake up out of that.
Mhm.
And then just before the deepest stage is when you go into REM sleep, rapid eye movement, and that's
Yeah.
when the dreams occur. And so that's the normal progression.
Mhm.
For me, what's abnormal is that I go through that entire sequence backwards. So I go immediately into REM sleep, and the dreaming happens right away. Um, Often, I'd say about 50% of the time, without warning.
Wow.
Um, which, if you guys can probably imagine, makes some things about life a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
But it's something I've been dealing with my whole life, so I'm very familiar with it. And so it will be in the moments where it's shortly after I've fallen asleep, or it's right in that transitionary period. And then sometimes it'll be like I'll come out of it. And then so the coming out of it also has this kind of a blend, sort of an experience of the waking life and the dreaming life. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how that works.
That has got to be super, super strange to comprehend. I mean, I was just telling you before we came on to record about my temporal lobe epilepsy, and I'm the flip side of it, where I get continuous deja vu. So my surreal world is it's quite hallucinogenic, sort of on that borderline hallucinogenic, which I would assume kind of crosses over with some of your experiences of that.
I bet it does.
Everything's normal, but something's not quite right. That kind of feeling.
Definitely. And an interesting side note on that is that of all the people that I've ever talked to, the large majority of people, and I could go into as much detail as I can, as articulate as I could possibly do, and most people don't really get it. They don't really understand what I'm talking about. The people that seem to really understand without much effort at all what I'm talking about is people who have epilepsy.
Yeah.
So that's really
I can see where that kind of brain state would butt up to each other and be very, very, very similar. It'd be interesting to know just I don't know whether you do know about the neurological firing that happens when you're coming out of that state, whether you're overproducing in certain parts of your brain, if you're overfiring, if it's overstimulated by the dream state into the real state. But well, that would be
interesting. In all the testing, I can't say that specifically has been measured. Now, it has been measured like while I'm in the dream state, and then it's just firing off like a lightning storm. And then it's like it happens right away. But like the transition out of it, that would be interesting to find out.
Definitely. Anyway, I'm kind of taking you off down another rabbit hole here, so I don't want to steal your thunder. Okay. And I'm still excited about your story, so please carry on.
Okay, so I guess I came from being in my younger years a bit of a skeptic about any sort of paranormal things, and I never really came from any sort of a belief system either. So this was never something I took very seriously. There was one experience that I had, and it's something I don't think about very often. And it happened when I was a lot younger, and it was before all of this started to really manifest. And I mean the narcolepsy condition, because that sort of all kind of came all at once. It wasn't something that I had my entire life. It's like all of a sudden it started happening, and then forever since then. This is an experience I had with some of my cousins, where it was very strange, but there were a bunch of us cousins, and we were all together on like a summer holiday, and we were all up late at night, and we were talking about a bunch of spooky stories and stuff like that. Well, one of my cousins knew about a ritual.
Okay.
And we were all about 12 years old, more or less. And she knew all about it, like all the steps. And this is something that none of us knew anything about. And we were just, curious and interested. All right. So we went ahead and did it. The ritual was to make somebody levitate.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay?
And we were all just sort of curious and fascinated about it. But short story, we did it and it happened.
Wow.
Okay. I can't deny it. And I haven't even thought about it all that much since then. But I do remember it, and it definitely happened. It wasn't for a very long time, and it was the sort of thing where there was a ritual involved, and we were all around, and one person laid down on their back, and we all laid around them, and we all put our our fingertips on them, and then the person came up off the ground.
Wow.
And so that's the first thing. Through all my skepticism, that was still something that was planted in my memory, and I couldn't just dismiss that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first little thing that opened me up. Okay, then come the narcolepsy, then having all of these strange dreams in and out, and ordinary dreams that are almost exactly like the real world that I fell asleep in, only slightly different. And then that affecting my recall of what happened that day. And then going through all the diagnosis and all of the scientific explanation about what's going on and causing this to happen, trying to just sort of put that away and get on with dealing with this in my real life, but still being an impactful thing that I really didn't know what to do with. I couldn't just dismiss it. Okay. Okay. Then going through growing up and, some of my younger adult life, and learning how to cope with this in a way that I could be as functional as I could be in my life, being able to do things, operate machinery and be able to drive without falling asleep and this kind of thing. Then I came to find out much later that part of this condition, part of what comes with this condition, is it can cause seizures. Now, I didn't have any, that didn't even occur to me. And it wasn't even something I thought I was dealing with. But one morning I woke up and the way that it felt, honestly, it felt like I had gone out the night before. I had gotten hammered, drunk, and had gotten into a bar fight, lost, and then came home and woke up. That's how I felt. That's how my body felt. I felt beaten and bruised, sore all over. That didn't happen. I remember what I did the night before. I remember what was going on. Nothing like that happened. There was no reason to explain this, but like I was incredibly sore, like muscle sore, joint sore, all over the place. And it was bad enough, and it was bad enough that it lasted for a few days. And I even had like injuries in my mouth that are very sort of typical of seizure, having a seizure. And so after about 5 days of this lingering sort of feeling all beaten up, I decided to go to the hospital. And then we found out that I had a different sort of a condition, that a brain condition that was a bit of a concern. And in the field of the understanding of the brain and the mind and all of this, it's not a very exact science. But anyway, it was something that was considerable enough that could affect my health, so we decided to deal with that. It was during this period. Okay. Now there was one evening, or no, it was the middle of the day. That's the thing. It was in the middle of the day, and I take a lot of naps. The strange thing about this condition is that I never suffer with insomnia, ever. But I rarely get a complete night's worth of sleep. I usually go to sleep real quick, and then I get maybe an hour, 2 or 3 in, and then I wake back up again. So I'm like in and out throughout the day. And so I take a lot of naps. So I went to go take a nap in the middle of the day, and I go and I'm laying down on my bed, and presumably I go to sleep. And I had one of the very few times I could say that was an out-of-body experience. And this was fully like from a completely different perspective, looking back and seeing myself laying there. And then there was this sort of a trigger that I had never had this experience before. So there was this trigger like, oh my God, this is really happening. Okay. And then, so I'm laying there, and there's also there's also a strange thing about lying in bed, being asleep, and knowing you're asleep.
Yeah.
and experiencing being asleep and even dreaming, but then also there's a bit of like a conscious overlap where it's like, I know that that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that sort of a thing. And then out of the back of the room from the foot of the bed, and this is in the middle of the day, so there's daylight shining, come these dark, shadowy figures, and very not of any sort of definite shapes. They were just these small shadowy figures, about maybe like about the size of your hand.
Wow.
And there were several of them, and they started to come up, and the feeling was not good. Okay, it's not nice. It was dark and it was scary, and they started coming up, and it's like, I'm registering this, like this is happening, and then they started swirling around, starting with my feet, and I'm laying flat straight, and starting with my feet and swirling around my feet like this. And there was like there was a bunch of them. Imagine like a school of fish or something like that. You know, there was a bunch of them, and they were swirling around and slowly creeping up towards my head. And I'm getting more and more and more anxious as this is happening, not having any control over anything that's going on. And it's going around and around and around. And the more so, it felt cold and it felt dark and it like brooding, like not welcome. Felt threatening. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, what's going to happen when it gets close to my face? And they did. They started swirling around my face. And by the time they started swirling around my face, I could feel them. And it was like a grainy scratching sort of feeling. And at about that point, I got really freaked out, and then I snapped out of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there was enough going on in my, like I was thinking about this as it was happening. And there was enough going on there. And then when I snapped out of it, it was still fresh enough, like this just happened. That.
So did you see that from your out of body experience? Did you see that happening to your body, or did you come back in after that experience and then experience?
I had come back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when that started happening, it was from the first person laying there on the bed. And then I see them, they start coming. And that is the only time I've ever had. I've had several dreams. I've had really, really lucid dreams. I've had recurring dreams. I've had dreams like stories that continue on like a series.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of them are like far out and surreal. Some of them are very realistic. Okay. None of them were ever like this.
Yeah.
This was the only one like this that I ever had. And that also made it stand out a bit more.
I bet. I mean, the first thing that occurs to me about this, and it is from my own limited perspective on what you're telling me. So I used to practice out of body astral projection, and it was something I was fascinated with as a child. This whole theory that you could detach yourself and travel anywhere, and I would get to a certain point outside my body, which was just a few inches away, and then I would jolt back in. And I learned later it's because I didn't practice safe astral travel, which sounds ridiculous. So it's about
not so ridiculous.
No, it's not so ridiculous.
No.
So it's about keeping attached to your actual material body. And if you think about your body, your soul and your spirit, I believe your soul and your spirit are two separate energies within you that combine to make you who you are. And one of them will astral project while the other stays there and kind of looks after your body, your breathing, etc. If that's disconnected, these energies that are around will go, woohoo, this is a vessel that's not particularly well protected right now. And you've not made that protective link between your energy shifting. I mean, that's just my very first thought on this.
That's very interesting. That makes sense. And the tethering effect too, because it was kind of like that. I mean, I had started out in this sort of like a bird's eye view from, say, about the ceiling of the room, and then it's like I got sucked back, and that's when this started happening.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about if those were causally related or not, but it makes more sense that it would be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have all these kind of energies and entities around us, like you say, within worlds that are just outside our peripheral senses, that are always there, seeking opportunity. And I mean, people would say that what you've experienced is maybe on the demonic side of things. I'm not quite sure whether that's a word that suits the 21st century for what these things are, because we have such a notion of demons in a, and I could go on about this for ages, in the Catholic sense, in a very religious sense. To me, and the raft of reading that I'm kind of drawing in at the minute is the general consensus between a lot of people who look into folklore and mythology is that demons are cousins to the Fae. So they are within a kind of realm spectrum of maybe ancient deities or natural spirits that preside. And that end, that kind of demonic end, that more malevolent end, is related, is relatable to that section, which hence...
And sort of a taxonomy of, say, entities?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's just my perspective. That's just my perspective. So when these things come in, it would explain their stature, the size of them. Oftentimes these things will not form themselves completely because they don't really want to be called out for what they are. So if you see them in their true existence, it gives a little bit of the power away. And especially if they're working to maybe try and gain some of your energy, that energetic movement that you were saying of shoaling a fish would, they're almost like, it sounds like they're almost checking out your energy levels, scanning through your energy coming from the bottom upwards.
It seemed like that. It was like a scan.
Yeah. I can definitely get the sense of that. I mean, what they want to do with that energy, where they want to go with that energy is kind of, I'm on the fence about that. About, people say, oh, they want your soul. It's like, well, they can have mine. I don't think any of them lot would want my soul.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I don't know, but all I can say is that experience, also, like, having come out of a sort of state of cynicism into a more sort of open perspective, in my consideration of anything paranormal or like this, I'm a lot more open to it. So I don't have a lot of I guess animosity or trepidation towards these things. Okay. I feel like that's just not useful. I mean, if there is something going on, then and it's happening, then you might as well encounter it and see what's going on, without being afraid of it, to keep your wits about you, in other words. All right. And so that's kind of my mentality about it. But this one for sure was dark and threatening. Of all the experiences that I've ever had.
Wow. Just going back to the first experience that you had, I think at least most people sort of my age in the UK went through a stage of that. Is it light as a feather, heavier than a stone? Levitation thing, where we all hoped, that somebody would levitate in that situation. Unfortunately, never happened to me. I kind of wish it did.
Right.
I do.
And I didn't believe that it would. I was never the sort that would consider that, but there was about, if I think about all my cousins together, there's about 10 or 12 of us. Okay. And we all recognize that this is happening. And it didn't really escalate from there. I mean, there was it, and we were all just stunned. And then it sort of passed, and we were just like, oh God, what do we do with this now? Like, we can't tell anybody about this because we'll get in trouble. But it's like, we all know what we saw. And so there was that. And then even maybe because of that is why I haven't thought about it very much ever since.
Yeah.
Okay, but so that was really the first individual experience that I had that was something that I couldn't dismiss. Like, this is something that happened, and it's definitely unusual, even in my own context. It's unusual for me.
Yeah.
So there's that. So that kind of opened me up to some other things. Then fast forward a few more years, a good friend of mine from the States, we went on a trip to Europe. We went to Germany for 2 weeks. And I've got some family and friends there, and we planned out a whole trip, and we just went all around the whole country for 2 weeks, and staying with different friends of mine. And now my friend has a very different point of view on things than I do. He comes from a very sort of traditional American Christian sort of point of view. And then also when it comes to, it's funny because in a way he's almost a little bit more open to, say, supernatural things than I am in the context of religion. But his attitude towards it is really dark. Like, he's always really anxious about anything like that. And like, he always has to protect himself. And I don't really feel that way. And I also don't want to bring that emotion to it. Yeah. You know, because I feel like it colors the experience. You know? So anyway, we go travel, and so we stayed at one of my friend's house. Now, the amazing thing about here in Europe is that you guys have these properties and these landscapes that are just super, super old. Now, of course, I mean, landscapes all over the world are super old, but you've got these properties that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And the amount of time of energy accumulating and into a space, I mean, there's just so much. And so some of these old houses are kind of interesting. Now, so it was in our very first stop. We went to a small town in northern Germany, stayed with a really good friend of mine. We're about the same age. And interesting thing is that house is not that old. That house is only built within the last 100 years. Maybe shorter than that, maybe like the last 50, 60 years. It's in a very sort of suburban type of neighborhood. And anyway, so it's the very first night we stayed there. And this was his first trip out of the United States. Regardless, it's a long trip. So, you know, we're kind of tired. We get there, we're kind of tired. We want to go to sleep. And so she put us in separate rooms to sleep. And I was sleeping in her partner's son's room. And then he was sleeping in like the study on the couch. And so anyway, so we're tired, we go to sleep. We both experienced something this night. Now, our experiences were different, but they were at the same time, same place. So I'll start with mine. So at really early in the morning, like just before dawn, it must have been like around 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Now, I'm in my usual state where it's like there's periods where I'm sort of semi-conscious. It's like I'm trying to sleep and I'm like halfway there and I'm halfway not there. And then I'm like, so that means that I'm halfway conscious. And in that conscious mind, normally I'm thinking, okay, well, I want to keep sleeping because I'm tired. So I'm in about that state. I'm not ready to get up yet. And I'm on my side. And I heard the door open up and I heard somebody walk into the room. And the whole time this is happening, I'm thinking like, this is early in the morning. This is my host friend, and she wants to get us up. It's time to get up, and I don't want to get up. So I'm laying there on my side. I hear the door open. I hear somebody walk into the room, and I'm thinking to myself, no, not now, not yet. Well, and then I feel a nudge, like, and it was like a gentle nudge on like my shoulder, on my back. I'm shrugging it off like, no, I'm not ready yet. And it did it a couple of times, and it did it in kind of like a teasing kind of a way. You know? It wasn't like my friend like grabbing me saying, get up. It was just sort of like, it was like a child. Yeah. It was like a child coming in and like teasing a little bit. Okay. but I didn't think a whole lot about it. And I was really just trying to be as dismissive as I could so I could, get some more hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Then it passed. Okay. Then I wake up. Then my friend comes into the room. She wakes me up. It's about, say, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, daylight's out. And she's like, come on, time to get up, eat breakfast, time to do things. And so I get up, so on and so on. They made us a nice big breakfast. And then my friend was sleeping and I had to go and get him up. And then we go when we sit down. All right. Then my friend starts asking, my friend that I'm traveling with, starts asking my host friend questions about the house. Like how long they've lived there. Did they know who lived there before? If they knew when it was built, how old it is, these sort of questions. And then he starts talking about how, like, oh, it's so interesting in Europe because you got these interesting old properties and there are these, stories of things inhabiting inside of old properties like that. And if they knew of any stories like this about this property. And this also, my host friends are very like scientific, secular minded folks. Okay. And they were like, oh, that's kind of interesting because there actually is a story about this house. Really? So they tell us the story. And there is a bit of a story with this house. And this is a story that's been passed down by 3 levels of people. So the people who owned the house before passed this story over to the people, my friends who own it now. And they were told that story by the people who owned it before them.
Yeah.
Okay. Story was, in a nutshell, there was a family living there. There was a young girl who was part of the family. And mysteriously, unexplained, one day while she was looking in the bathroom mirror, she suddenly died. And the story is that the presence of this girl is still in that house. Okay. Now, as soon as my host friend said that story, that triggered my memory of what happened in the morning. And I'm thinking, okay, that's really a strange coincidence. Okay. Now, my friend then goes on telling about an experience that he had that night. Now, his experience was like dark and scary. He's like, in the middle of the night, I felt this dark presence come into the room. And then I went through all of my ritual protection things and I just pushed it out as much as I could. Okay. That's not what it was like for me. For me, it was like a little girl had come into the room and was just sort of like teasing me a little bit. Okay. That's what it was like. So then I asked my host friend, I said, hey, okay, so I just want to confirm something. Okay. At about really early in the morning, about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, you came into my room and you tried to wake me up, right? And she's like, well, yeah, it was, I came and got you up. It's like, no, that was like about 7 or 8 o'clock. I said, no, well, much before that, like just before the sun came up, it was still dark. She's like, no, I didn't. We were sleeping. A couple of things I do remember. I do remember the room getting suddenly very, very cold, cold enough that I even could see that there was some frost on the window. And this is in the middle of July. No, it was in the middle of September when we were there. So it was still summer. And I didn't think anything of it, but I do remember that. So that was something that happened. There was something that came and interacted with me.
I mean,
unfortunately,
isn't it strange? Sorry, isn't it strange though that how you were saying from your perspective how you don't perceive these things as particularly always bad or evil or malevolent, and your friend who is from a religious background has been taught that all these kind of interactions need protecting against, and the two sort of sides of it, and how you perceive that experience. It's very, very different. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, for him, it's just something to be afraid of and dangerous, and to me, I mean, I can imagine that it can be, but I don't want to I don't want to be the one bringing that.
Yes, I understand.
So that one, it was very sort of lighthearted and kind of warm and innocent, but curious enough.
Yeah.
So there was that, and that's another thing that I can't deny that one. There was definitely like something that was interacting with me. It was touching me.
It's nice that it's
playing with me.
Corroborated though with your friend who was there at the time that had a similar experience, because I know people watching this will have very skeptical views, especially with people who have brain related issues, whether, you know, wherever on the spectrum. When you say that you've experienced something, people can be a little dismissive of that. I tend to go the other way. I tend to think that people with neurological disorders tend to be a lot more open to these kind of things, as opposed to it happening to them on an internal level. So
I'm accustomed to that kind of doubt. So I mean, I know it's going to be there, and that's fine. All I've got is my stories to tell, and
I think what you'll find though with the viewers that come and stay and subscribe and watch my YouTube channel, everybody has been utterly supportive. Everybody is super interested in other people's experiences, and it does open up a whole raft of questions and debate, really, about these things, you know, and about how it affects us and how it affects the world around us. And, you know, are those kind of conditions about traversing the veil, if you like? You know, does it mean that that the brain state can alter? So you're more aware of outside. I mean, because we are, as human beings, we are so limited in our senses. You know, our eyes can't see. You know, we see a minute amount of the spectrum.
Such a little fraction.
Yeah, it's so small. Same with our hearing, our touch, our taste. You know, our energetic levels. We are such limited little monkeys on this planet that we believe that nothing else can exist outside of that. It's interesting. I do believe we have gone well over the realms of.
Okay, I was afraid of that.
No, I wasn't.
That's the I guess those are the most significant ones.
I tell you what, I did say to this before we came on about, I kind of got the feeling that you would have definitely more to tell. So I would be more than happy for you to come back and chat about other experiences. And maybe it could be that if people want to leave comments, if anybody's got any questions about narcoleptic experiences and what it means, if anybody out there has this condition or neurological conditions and have had paranormal experiences that are maybe they don't know whether it's to do with condition or to do with the paranormal, I'd love to hear about that as well. But for now, it's been super interesting, and I'm sure there'll be comments that we can come back and sift through together and look at. And I know you'll keep your eye on the comments as well, and maybe you can answer some questions as people are coming in and asking about that. I do think that at some stage I'm going to have to try and track down somebody who knows about neurology to kind of explore it a little bit deeper, because it's cropped up now so many times in the interviews that I've been doing. It's quite unreal, really. So anyway,
there must be something to it, you know.
Definitely got to be something to it. Christian, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and chatting about these things.
Likewise.
And I hope that through other people's comments that you start getting a broader range of maybe answers than just me sort of rambling on about my first thoughts about things that have been going on. So thank you so much.
Look forward to it.
And
all right, nice talking to you, Kate. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And I shall speak to you very soon.
Okay.
If I can find the stop button.